politics barn. And boy, is this place a mess. I haven't been in here in like 9 months. But as I said, it's so important right now that we speak up and make these political videos. I'm Eric Arnold. I believe in free speech. This is my politics barn, which has been my studio for the past, 5 years. And we're starting to make these political videos again because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The man wanted to speak and they didn't want him to speak, so they murdered him. Well, we can't have that, can we? You're not going to silence us, so we're going to talk. Before we get into the latest freedom of speech news and the Charlie Kirk assassination, we want to take a moment to remember the 3 police officers that were murdered today in York County, Pennsylvania. Best I can tell, the facts of the situation are that they were serving some kind of warrant or protection order on an individual in some rural farm type area in, I forget the name of the township. It's York County. It's south of York. That's probably about 10-15 miles north of the Maryland-Pennsylvania state line. Very rural area. And the subject, the criminal, opened fire and murdered 3 officers. 2 more are in critical condition. God, I hope they pull through. It's the worst day in Pennsylvania law enforcement in, I believe, like 16 years. I think in 2009, a similar deal happened where some criminal ambushed the police as they showed up to his residence. Yeah, my uncle was a township cop, and he always told me the domestics were the worst, because you just never knew when, you're dealing with some violent asshole who's used to slapping his wife around, and he just decides he isn't going to take it anymore and just decides to take it to the next level, because, he's a hateful, violent asshole. And just next thing you know, here come the guns, and the poor cop, he has nothing, he has no dog in the fight. He's just there doing his job, and hateful asshole just starts firing bullets. So it's a real shame, and we're sad, and we're thinking about those police officers' families. That nobody should have to, hear that dad went to work and then, well, he won't be coming back because, some asshole killed him. Just shouldn't happen. But this is the real world that we live in, so we'll look for more details on that, but I don't, all you're going to find out is the name of the individuals involved. It's, I would imagine, not going to be any more sexy of a story than that. It's just going to be some jerk, some abusive, violent jerk that decided that he just was going to shoot at cops. And so we did that. All right, now, a lot of things happening on the Charlie Kirk front. First and foremost, Jimmy Kimmel has been removed from the airwaves by ABC. Now, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. Jimmy Kimmel, a major spokesperson for the communist left, has been removed from the airwaves. Now, why? Well, apparently Monday, in his monologue, I can't remember the exact quote of what he said, but he said something to the effect of that the MAGA right has spent all weekend trying to find reasons why, or that the killer was somebody anything other than a MAGA right guy. Basically stating or alluding to the fact that the guy's a MAGA guy. The killer's a MAGA guy. And then he made a joke about the president. that he's not really sorry Charlie Kirk's dead, and that he is mourning him like a 4-year-old would mourn a goldfish. Okay, you know, I'm not going to disparage your right to make jokes about the president. You know, sure, that's free speech. Now, the first part, I think, is what got him in trouble. In that, and I've struggled with this, in that I am firmly on the side of free speech. I do not think people should be deplatformed for speaking hatefully about Charlie Kirk. Now, when I said there's a difference between deplatformed and fired, in other words, if you say that you hate Charlie Kirk and you're glad he's dead, well then your employer has every right to fire you if he's not down with that sentiment. Especially if you're in any kind of position of responsibility, like a teacher or an airline pilot. You know, yeah, you absolutely should be fired. Unless you're teaching for a left-wing school where all the parents are left-wing and they're all down with that sentiment. It's like, yeah, we're all pro-murder. We're okay with that. We're okay with you teaching our kids that murder's good. So, you know, in that case, sure, you know, your customers, the people that write your check, the people of leftist county are all down with that. Well then, okay, everybody's happy. But usually, you probably work in a district where a number of people are not pro-murder, and they're not down with that. So you can't just say anything you want without consequence. You know, so, but there's a difference, like now, Kimmel being kicked off the air. I've struggled with this because the left, the media left, which is pretty much all the media, has never had an issue with lying. That's one of my greatest frustrations, is that the moderate Democrat voter is mostly just ignorant because they will not consume any other news other than the left-wing media, which just lies to them repeatedly, consistently, every day, in every way. And they just won't turn the channel. Now, I glanced at an old video and I thought, examples. So I'm going to, give you some big examples, small examples. Here's a big example. President Biden is sharp as a tack. He's never been quicker on his feet. He doesn't miss meetings. He's running circles around his younger counterparts. Does that sound familiar to you? Because you heard that for, 2 years leading up until suddenly the debate. So remember how that went down. They were going to try to put Joe Biden back in the White House without exposing him to the public. They were just going to tell you how smart he was, much like the Wizard of Oz. They were just going to keep him behind the curtain and just tell you what a mighty and terrible mighty and terrible Biden, and not to be trifled with, and he's so amazing, and don't doubt us that Joe Biden is the mighty and terrible Biden. Well, of course, none of that's true, but they were going to try and pull that off. Well, something happened that they never thought would happen. He was losing. They're looking at the poll numbers, not the ones they're showing us or telling us about. They're ones they keep to themselves and saying, we're going to lose. We got to do something. I mean, we can't just, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to lose. So they said, well, we got to do one of two things. Either we got to get rid of this guy, or he's got to go out there and show everybody that he's the great and mighty, terrible Biden. Well, he went out there and showed he was a terrible Biden, all right. He sucked. He showed everybody he's a doddering old man, incapable of leading or running anything. And that they had been lying to the Americans for the last, 18 months. So it's like, wait a minute. This didn't happen overnight. This guy's been a marshmallow for a long time, and you guys have been lying about it. So, yes, that was a huge lie. Now you're going to say, well, the media didn't know. They're just taking at face value what their sources, of course, being the Biden administration, were telling them. They know. Take, for example, here's one specific member of the media, Joe Scarborough, a very loathsome, low person. He met personally with Biden numerous times. So he had seen him in action. He knew perfectly well that the guy was not capable and not in charge of anything, and he lied about it. He just lied. So there's an example. Here's a couple small ones, but significant. The bloodbath comments, remember that? They kept telling us over and over again that Donald Trump was promising a bloodbath. There's going to be a bloodbath. That's just a blatant falsehood. They know damn well he was referring to an economic bloodbath in the auto industries. And they're just taking his comment out of context to try to make it sound like he's violent. And that's just a blatant falsehood, that they're trying to get you to believe that he's violent because of a comment made out of context, or that they're telling it to you out of context. To me, that's a lie. That's dishonest. It's like, whoa, he actually did say that. Yeah, but that's not what he meant, and you took it out of context. If you gave him the whole context of what he said, it would be clear that that's not what he meant. So you're just giving you're misleading the viewers. But they don't care. Another one, the pollster, Ann Seltzer, the gold standard in Iowa, remember her? She always gets prominence every 4 years because she's the gold standard for the Des Moines Register. Well, she comes out the Sunday before the damn election and says that Biden is ahead in Iowa. That Biden is going to, Harris. I've got Biden on the brain. At this point, Biden had been 86th by his own party. It was Harris. Harris is going to win Iowa. Iowa's a deep red state. So for her to be up in Iowa, being reported by a reputable pollster that she is looking to win Iowa, that's a political earthquake. Now, none of that was true. She wasn't really up 3 points, and this pollster was too good to have made that mistake. It was intentional, 100% intentional. Donald Trump won the state of Iowa by, I believe, 13 points. That's not a mistake. That's not an oopsie. That's done intentional. That's a lie. That is a 100% lie meant to influence the election, to try to depress the Republican turnout, to try to limit the Republican enthusiasm, make everybody sad going, oh man, if we can't win Iowa, we're going to get killed. Oh no. But none of it was true. And lastly, let's not forget Hunter Biden's laptop. Where they lied about that, saying, oh, well, no, we're not even going to mention this, this incredibly damning piece of news 3 weeks before the damn election. They all just covered it up, saying, well, it's Russian disinformation, and we can't really even talk about it because it's not verified. They knew perfectly well that laptop was accurate. The government knew it was accurate. The FBI knew it was accurate. The CIA knew it was accurate. They had it in their possession for months and months prior to it being made public. All their sources were telling them it's accurate, but then the government called them all, and they didn't have to really tell them hard because they all think with the same brain. Hey, look, don't talk about that. Didn't happen, doesn't exist. So that, to me, is a lie by omission. In other words, they're just not talking about it, but they know it's there, and they know it's accurate. They're trying to get you to believe it's some kind of Russian disinformation. That's a lie. But nobody on the left seems to remember this. All my moderate Democrat friends, they just don't seem to remember this, or they don't hold the people that lied to him responsible. They just like, well, I don't know, I hate Donald Trump, so I just wanted it to be true or false or whatever whatever they want. They just go along with the lie just because that's what they want it to be. So, here you have Kimmel just flat out lying about who the shooter is. He's a leftist. The evidence of this is everywhere. Everywhere. Kimmel knew this when he made his monologue on Monday. Yet he still went out there and tried to get you to believe that the shooter is some kind of a Republican or a MAGA person. It's a blatant lie. It's not even remotely true. I mean, the evidence is everywhere. The texts, the inscriptions on the bullets, the comments of the parents. It's like, just because the parents are Republicans does not mean the kid is Republican. Here's a tip-off that the kid's not a Republican. He murdered Charlie Kirk. He didn't do it because the guy owed him money. He didn't do it because Charlie Kirk wasn't sufficiently Republican. This is a kid who's a gay kid who's dating another guy who's trying to turn into a woman. These are leftists, hardcore leftists. Text saying, I hate Charlie Kirk. It's everywhere, the evidence. I mean, the evidence is in the charging documents that they've charged this kid with capital murder, whatever it is, and they're basically put some evidence in there as to what his motivation was. He's a leftist, a Marxist. He's not a MAGA Republican. Kirk or Kimmel knows this. He knew this. Came out and lied anyway. Now, I think what's happening, should he be taken off the air? I would say no. I would say, let them talk their talk. We've always let them lie. We've never taken any action against them, and we don't want to be the misinformation police. Then we're no better than they are, where they can deplatform us and refuse to let us speak because they're saying that, oh, what you're saying is not true, therefore you don't get to speak. Now, I would argue in a lot of cases what we are saying is true, and they just don't want us to speak, period. Whereas this is a question of, do you get to speak when you're just lying? And that was a blatant, demonstrable lie. So, I'm torn there. And Jimmy Kimmel is a disgusting person, just disgusting. He's a smart guy. He knows better, but he just can't help but hate half the country and hate Donald Trump, apparently. So it just can't help himself. So I'm torn there. And what I think is happening is this. Sadly, as I said, moderate Democrats they're ignorant as hell because they just listen to the lying leftist media. I saw a poll, I think it might have been done by YouGov, maybe, not sure, and they asked, what do you think the political ideology of the shooter was? And it was close, but more people thought he was a Republican than a Democrat, than a communist. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, that's how effective the leftist media is, or how, entrenched in their ways that the moderate Democrat voter is. And I think that might have been where this is coming from. In other words, Donald Trump's putting a marker down, and he's saying, you know what, this is an incredibly important event here that probably, I would say this is the most important event that's happened since 9/11. This is that important, and half the country is getting the wrong information. Half the country is running around thinking something that isn't true. So this is it. We're not going to allow this anymore. There's not going to be allowed just lies about this issue. We're just not allowing that. We are going to be the information police. Again, I'm not excited about that, but he's a smart politician, Donald Trump is. He knows that this issue is a political issue. I cannot wait to see how this Luigi trial, he's the guy that murdered the healthcare executive, shot him in the back in broad daylight in Manhattan, and is now a leftist cult hero because he murdered a capitalist. And he's going to trial in a jurisdiction that's about to elect an out-and-out communist. I don't know he's going to be convicted. I honestly think they might get 12 people in the jury box and just go, yeah, he's a capitalist. That guy had no rights. Not here in New York. It is going to be ugly when that trial happens. It's going to be an ugly event. You're going to watch a lot of hate go down while that's happening. Hell, you saw it this week. I guess they dismissed some charges. I don't know what these charges are. I think murder with the intent to commit terrorism or something like that. And the leftist judge said, I'll see the evidence of this. It's like, well, I don't know. What's if I kill somebody in broad daylight on the public street to make a political point, aren't I trying to commit terrorism? Aren't I trying to frighten all the other people like that guy that I just murdered? Isn't that what the definition of the terrorism statute is? I don't know. I guess the judge didn't think so. So he dismissed these charges. Now, he's still up on all these other murder charges, but he just dismissed the special murder charge, the terrorist murder charge. And all of Luigi's followers are dancing in the street, almost literally, hugging and high-fiving. He's a murderer. He's evil. I mean, what are you guys doing? Are you evil just like he is? Don't answer that. The obvious question is yes. So, yeah, we're to wait till old Tyler goes to trial. How's that going to go down? So Trump knows that he has to win these cases in the court of public opinion. That's where he has to win these cases. So to do that, the Americans have to get the truth, not Jimmy Kimmel's lies. So, I think, and let's not get this twisted. What I think happened was ABC, as far as I understand what happened, ABC, the FCC commissioner, probably at the behest of the president, threatened ABC and said, this is unacceptable. This guy, your number one late night host, is mocking this political violence. This is an outright falsehood right here that he said, trying to get his audience to believe that the murderer was a Republican. There's all this evidence saying he's the complete opposite. So you got to do something. In his public statements, he didn't, say what something is. Now, in private, he very well may have said, something is you got to take him off the air. I think had Kimmel, I would bet ABC went to Kimmel and said, look, we're getting a lot of heat here. Just apologize. Just say, I misspoke. Turns out that, here the Utah governor says he's a left-winger. The charging documents by the Utah authorities say he's a left-winger. A bunch of texts say he's a left-winger and that he hated Trump. We'll see if that's true or not, but, I let you believe that he's a Republican, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. Something to that effect, and just apologize, and Kimmel wouldn't do it. Of course he wouldn't do it. Of course he wouldn't do it. So that backed ABC into a corner. Their affiliates apparently were the ones that mutiny. They're the ones that went to ABC. Disney not only were they getting some heat from the FCC, but the affiliates, apparently affiliates, also have to meet FCC requirements. And I guess they're the ones that got more nervous than Disney. In other words, Disney's this massive, powerful corporation, and they probably would just go, do your worst. We'll see you in court. But apparently the way the broadcasting world works is that ABC puts their programming out there for local channels, like whatever your local ABC channel is, and the local channel is owned by somebody else, not owned by Disney. And that guy is not big and powerful. He's a rather small company, perhaps, at least when compared to Disney. And he's being threatened by the FCC, saying, you know, you're putting on some pretty hateful speech right now. And, you know, we think you're violating section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the FCC code or what have you, and we're going to make trouble for you. Now again, I'm not that excited about yanking Jimmy Kimmel off the air. I don't like the precedent. But I think what's going on is Trump's putting a marker down, and he's saying, on this issue, we're not going to have any more of this bullshit. You're not going to just lie with impunity. I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to make trouble for you guys if that's the way you're going to go. Now, is that going to go for everything now all of a sudden? I don't know. I would guess not, but I don't know. In other words, Trump's got to navigate this carefully. Otherwise, you know, the left can run around with some, you know, truth to it that we're being censored. We're being censored. Even though that's what they've done for the past 5 years. So it might be fun just to watch them flounder around and get a taste of their own medicine. But you know, I don't agree with it. But on this issue, yeah, perhaps Trump has a point. You know, it's like, you got to tell the truth. This is not right. We let you lie about a lot of stuff, but this is like the most important issue that's happened here in the last 20 years, and you guys are lying about it. Bullshit. We're not going to let you do that. We're just not. So we'll see what happens. It's a big deal that Kimmel's been taken off the air. Now, other things that are floating in the wind here. Trump has declared that Antifa is a terrorist organization. I don't know what that means. Someone smarter than me's got to, you know, does that mean anything? Does that mean they now can't get on airplanes, or do their credit cards not work when they go to get gas, or what happens? Am I not allowed to wear my little Antifa flag? You know, is that I have to hide that now? I'm not sure. What I hope it means, and I just don't know, you know, if this is true or not. To me, you don't do that if you're the president unless you got something to back it up. And there's a lot of noise coming out of this investigation that a lot of people seem to know that Charlie Kirk was going to get shot on the 10th of September 2025. And how on earth does everybody seem to know this? So that's where I think it's possible he's doing it because he thinks he has the evidence to back it up, that he's going to be able to link those bastards to the assassination. I don't know. I mean, you know, I hope he can. I think they were involved. I guess we just have to wait to see if the evidence bears that out. You know, I think the boyfriend was involved, or certainly knew about it. Just from what I've heard about the timeline, it just doesn't, you know, from whatever he seemed to find out, he certainly didn't rush to the phone and call the police and say, all right, I hate to say this, but I know who did it. Here's where he is. You know, don't hurt him, that sort of thing. No. He didn't do any of that. So to me, he's guilty after the fact. I guess you know, again, this is all political. So they're probably handling with kid gloves right now. If they don't think he's going to if they think, how to say this, if they think people are going to feel sorry for him, they're not going to charge him. They don't want some weepy little fuzzy little furry up there. I didn't know. Yeah, that people are going to feel sorry for, that the big bad government is coming down on them. My lover, oh, my heart is broken. Now, again, I'd love to just bury him because I think he's guilty. But, again, all political. You have to win these cases in the court of public opinion, or there's no point in bringing them. It won't do us any good to put 7 or 8 little bastards in jail and lose the next election because people are sorry for the little bastards that they think we overcharged them, or we, it's almost like the January 6th stuff. Yeah, were a lot of people guilty of crimes on January 6th? Yeah, they were. Should they have been charged the way they were and punished the way they were? Hell no. The Biden administration went way over the top, just burying people for no other reason than they wanted to feel good about it. And it hurt them. I think that hurt them. What should have been a political win for them, they turned into a political loss. They lost the election in 24. The January 6th stuff did not help them win the election. Did it help them, at all? I don't think it did. It was either a neutral factor or it actually hurt them because they behaved so badly in handling the January 6th cases. And we don't want that to happen on our side. So we got to be fair with these pricks. And we've got to make sure that we're the ones that look like the good guys. Right now, we do look like the good guys. One of our top guys is laying in a casket right now, and one of their little bastards did it. So we want to make sure that, the ABC taking Kimmel off the air, that's along the lines of, we're going to make sure you moderate Democrats get it through your head that the killer was on your team. Get that straight. The killer was on your team. Because right now, I think a lot of these little goddamn Democrats that don't know that. Oh, I heard he was a Republican. No. So we're just going to have to keep saying that and saying it. He was on your team. He was a communist. Is a communist. He's a committed Marxist. So, All right. I think that's all I had for this evening. It's probably more, but, there's so much more. I mean, God, there's so much more. But it's going to be a continuous battle now. It's going to be a continuous battle. They're not stopping. You can tell just by the stuff posted online. Yeah, I don't know. I hear both sides of it. In other words, well, we've got all these new chapters and Turning Point, and they don't have any idea of what they've done. And then I look online and I'm like, I don't see any Democrats saying, yeah, that's it for me, I'm now a Republican. I don't see that at all. I really don't. Perhaps what I see is angry Republicans, but I don't see a lot of Democrats doing any introspection, any soul searching. So we just got to keep hammering at them, and I guess to start, just make them recognize the facts. Tyler Robinson is a hateful Marxist. He hated Charlie Kirk. Why? Because Charlie Kirk said things like, a boy can't become a girl. Can't happen. That's not a thing. And, of course, his lover wants to become a girl. So he's all mad. Because he can't have his way, according to Charlie Kirk. So he killed him. He's a hateful leftist. Leftists believe that boys can become girls. People in the MAGA movement, we don't believe that. We say, no, that's just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. Just doesn't. And so, but that's what leftists believe, that boys can become girls. And that is why he shot and killed Charlie Kirk. He's a leftist. I'm Eric Arnold. I believe in free speech. Hey, it's good that we got the barn working again, so we can do our videos out here now, and we'll talk again.